Far away in space, surrounded by stars, was the peaceful planet Zarka Prime. The people of this world were called Zarkans. They were gentle and kind, known for their beautiful cities, lush forests, and crystal-clear lakes for thousands of years. The Zarkans had never seen war or faced enemies. They lived in harmony, never imagining that darkness could touch their world. But one dark day, everything changed. A shadow fell over their planet, as massive ships appeared in the skies above their homes. These ships belonged to ruthless invaders called the Vargoths. The Vargoths were cruel, powerful, and feared across the galaxy. They never showed mercy to anyone. As the first ships landed, panic spread quickly among the peaceful Zarkans. Their cities shook as explosions ripped apart buildings. Families ran in terror, children cried, and brave Zarkan leaders did not know what to do. They had no armies, no weapons, and no hope against these invaders. In desperation, Zarkan elders gathered in a secret chamber beneath their biggest city. They had heard stories from passing traders about a mysterious and strong species living far away, a species known as humans. These humans were described as strange creatures who lived on a distant planet called Earth. They were said to be strong, fearless, and willing to fight for justice. The elders quickly agreed. They would send an urgent message asking humans for help. Even though the Zarkans knew very little about humans, their need was great. They sent their desperate message into space, hoping humans would answer quickly. Days passed slowly as Zarka Prime burned. Every passing hour made things worse. The invaders had taken over many cities, destroyed homes, and captured thousands of innocent Zarkans. Families hid in caves and forests. Afraid to come out into the open, everyone kept asking the same question: would anyone come to save them? Finally, after what seemed like forever, the Zarkan leaders received a reply. It was brief but clear. A strong human voice spoke from the communication device. "We have heard your call, Zarka Prime," the voice said calmly. "Support is coming. Hold strong." Hearing those words filled the frightened Zarkans with hope, but some also felt unsure. What kind of help would humans bring? Would these strange warriors fight against the terrifying Vargoths? Or would humans be even worse? All they could do was wait and hope for the best. Soon, bright flashes filled the skies above Zarka Prime. As huge human ships arrived from space, the Zarkans looked on in shock and amazement. These ships were massive, dark, and covered with powerful weapons. The very sight of them made many Zarkans tremble with fear. Had they invited monsters to their planet? The invaders saw the human fleet too, and quickly moved their own ships to attack. The sky above Zarka Prime lit up with fierce explosions and bright flashes. The humans fought bravely, using weapons the Zarkans had never seen before. Huge beams of light shattered enemy ships. Powerful missiles tore through Vargoth vessels. And soon the invaders realized they faced an enemy stronger than they imagined. While the space battle raged, the Zarkans watched in silence. Some were grateful, others were terrified. But everyone understood one thing clearly: humans were powerful, far more powerful than any species they had ever known. They began to wonder if asking for help had been wise after all. As the battle ended, many Zarkans came out of hiding, stepping carefully into the ruined streets. Human ships slowly landed near their main city. Doors opened, and tall, strong figures in dark armor stepped out. Each one carried advanced weapons and looked ready for battle. Their helmets hid their faces, and the frightened Zarkans stepped back, holding each other tightly. One of the humans stepped forward, slowly removing his helmet. His eyes were sharp, but his face was gentle. He kneeled carefully, looking at the scared Zarkans with a calm smile. "Don't worry," he said gently. "We are friends. We came to help." His words broke through their fear. Little Zarkan children approached carefully. Fascinated by the human warrior, he gently spoke to them, reassuring their worried parents. Soon, more humans arrived, bringing medical supplies, food, and blankets. They quickly started helping the wounded and calming frightened citizens. Now the Zarkans were even more confused. These humans looked scary, strong, and fierce, but acted with kindness, gentleness, and warmth. The humans had delivered powerful shock and fear to their enemies, but kindness and hope to their new allies. The Zarkans began to understand what it truly meant to call humans for help. Humans had come as warriors, but also as friends. They were fierce in battle, yet gentle in peace. They had answered the call for support, but had also delivered a powerful lesson. Never judge a friend by their strength, but by their kindness in times of need. Now, the Zarkans had a chance to rebuild their lives, protected by new and powerful allies humans. The sky above Zarka Prime was no longer silent. Thick smoke rose from burning cities. But high above, something incredible had happened. The Vargoth fleet was shattered. Their warships, once proud and feared, floated in pieces across orbit, ripped apart by human weapons no one in this part of the galaxy had ever seen. To the Zarkans, it felt like a dream. One moment they were hiding, praying, fearing the end. And the next, their enemy was gone, scattered like ash in the wind. The humans had come quickly, fought without mercy, and won the battle in only a few hours. The shock of it all hadn't faded yet. But now, something even more confusing was happening. The humans weren't leaving. Large metal ships landed across the capital plains, their hulls still smoking from battle. Out came tall figures, dressed in thick armor, their faces hidden behind glowing helmets. Their movements were slow, careful, like they didn't want to scare the Zarkans, but still just looking at them made the aliens nervous. These weren't just warriors. They looked like machines made for war. Everything about them seemed cold, perfect, and deadly. The way they walked, the way they scanned the area, like they were ready to destroy anything that moved. Zarkans peeked. From windows, bushes, and cracks in broken walls, whispers passed from mouth to mouth. Are they here to protect us, or to take over? Some asked. Others believed humans had come with good intentions, but none could say for sure. Then one human, taller than the rest, stepped forward. He removed his helmet slowly, revealing a face not much different from a Zarkan's 2 eyes, a mouth, and a tired expression. But there was something deep in his eyes, something ancient, like he had seen many battles before. He raised his voice calmly. To the people of Zarka Prime, he said, "We are here to help, not to conquer, not to rule, but to protect and restore peace." His words were carried through translation devices, and soon every Zarkan on the planet heard them. Still, fear didn't disappear right away. Trust takes time, especially after terror. That evening, the humans began building something outside the capital city. Huge machines rolled off their ships, setting up protective walls, defense systems, and small living quarters. They worked fast, with amazing skill and coordination. Zarkan engineers who had never seen such technology watched in awe. Within hours, what was once a battlefield turned into a heavily guarded safe zone. Humans placed energy shields, drone sentries, and even floating medical tents where injured Zarkans could be treated. One by one, frightened families began to step out of hiding and approach the human zone. A little Zarkan boy, no older than 7 cycles, walked toward a tall human guard holding a piece of fruit. He offered it, his small hands shaking. The human knelt and accepted the gift with a quiet thank you, gently patting the boy's head. That one moment changed everything. More children followed, then adults, slowly coming closer. Humans opened crates filled with food, clean water, warm blankets, and medicine. They treated the wounded, helped rebuild walls, and even played with the younger ones. The same hands that launched devastating attacks against enemy fleets were now healing and feeding the innocent. Still, some Zarkan leaders were not convinced. Elder Marith, one of the oldest advisors in the High Council, watched everything with narrowed eyes. "We must not be blind," she warned. "They helped us, yes, but they could take us too. Just because they smile doesn't mean they're not dangerous." But her warnings were quiet whispers compared to the loud cheers from townsfolk being reunited with their families. To them, the humans had saved their world, and nothing could erase that. As night fell, a massive human supply ship arrived. It was different from the others, sleek, silent, and glowing blue underneath. As it opened, hundreds of drones flew out, scanning the nearby land. Then tall machines followed, each one digging, scanning, and building something underground. The Zarkans asked what they were doing. The human commander replied, "We're building something to make sure this never happens again. A defense grid, planetary shield, and emergency evac system. Your world will never be left helpless again." His words brought mixed feelings. Gratitude, yes, but also discomfort. Some Zarkans feared this was how control started, not by force, but by kindness and protection. But most were too tired to think of politics. All they saw were strangers who arrived in their darkest hour and didn't walk away. The young boy who gave the fruit earlier now followed the human soldiers everywhere. He asked questions in his soft voice. "Why are your eyes so small? Can your ship fly faster than light? Why do you fight so hard?" One human smiled and replied, "Because if we don't fight hard, people like you get hurt." That answer spread among the locals like fire. Stories of brave humans protecting weak aliens reached every corner of Zarka Prime. Even far villages, untouched by war, began sending gifts to the human camps. Food, flowers, and songs filled the air. But while peace seemed to settle far above the planet, deep in the stars, the Vargoths were not finished. Their surviving leaders were already planning something worse, and humans knew that silence didn't mean safety. Something bigger was coming, and when it did, the galaxy would once again see what humans were truly capable of. Days passed since the humans arrived on Zarka Prime. The skies were calm now, but tension still lived in the hearts of many. The Vargoth fleet had been destroyed, yes, but the fear hadn't disappeared completely. Everyone knew the Vargoths would return, stronger, angrier. In the middle of all this, something unexpected began to happen. The Zarkans, who once feared the humans, started to admire them. They watched how humans moved calm but always alert, the way they helped the wounded, the way they built shelters for strangers, even when tired or injured themselves. Children followed the human soldiers around like they were heroes from old stories. One girl, barely tall enough to reach a soldier's knee, tried to imitate their walk. Her laughter made even the grumpiest soldier smile. The human commander, Captain Elias Ward, noticed this change. He stood on a small cliff overlooking the camp, watching Zarkan children playing beside armored tanks and mobile med units. A soft wind blew across the land, and Elias removed his helmet, letting the air touch his scarred face. "Commander," said his second-in-command, a woman named Mira. "Locals are opening their markets again. They're even offering food to our troops." Elias nodded. "That's good. It means they're beginning to trust us. But it also means they'll be the first ones hurt when the Vargoths come back." Mira looked at him puzzled. "You think they'll come back this fast?" "I know they will," he replied, "because we humiliated them. And monsters don't forgive that easily." Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the camp, a Zarkan healer named Rilna was working beside a human medic. They didn't speak the same language fluently, but their hands understood each other. Rilna mixed natural herbs, while the human injected advanced nanobots into wounds. Together, they saved lives that couldn't have been saved alone. Rilna had once feared humans, but now she respected them deeply. She saw how hard they worked, how they didn't rest unless everyone else was safe. Her views, like many others on Zarka Prime, were changing. That same evening, a group of Zarkan elders visited the human base. They wanted to thank the humans with a gift. They brought a large crystal from the heart of their mountains, an object of great spiritual meaning to their people. They placed it in front of the command tent. Elias stepped out, surprised by the gathering. "What is this?" he asked softly. One elder, his fur gray with age, spoke in a shaking voice. "This crystal is given only to those who have changed the fate of our people. Once we feared you. Now we know you are not destroyers, but protectors." Elias looked at the crystal, then at the faces of the people around him, some smiling, some tearful. "Thank you," he said gently, "but protectors only succeed when those they protect stand beside them." That night, Zarkan musicians played songs around the fire. Human soldiers sat with them, listening quietly. Some tried the strange alien food. Some even danced awkwardly to the music. For the first time, laughter echoed across the land that had once been filled with screams, but far beyond Zarka Prime, deep in space. The Vargoths were regrouping, inside a dark war chamber. The Vargoth High General slammed his clawed hand against a steel table. "They brought humans?" He growled. "You fools said this planet was weak." One Vargoth officer lowered his head in shame. "We did not expect such weapons, such fury." The general snarled. "Humans fight like demons. They don't just win, they humiliate. We must show them what it means to anger the Vargoth Empire." Back on Zarka Prime, the humans were preparing. They knew the calm wouldn't last forever. Captain Elias had ordered shield towers around the major cities, satellite tracking systems, and emergency tunnels under the cities in case of evacuation. They were not just defending Zarka Prime, they were training it to survive on its own. One day, while testing a defense system, a young Zarkan named Yellow approached a human technician. "Why do you help us?" he asked innocently. "What do you want in return?" The technician paused, looking at the small alien. "We don't want your land, your crystals, or your skies," he said with a smile. "We just don't like bullies, and we protect those who ask for help." Yellow thought for a moment, then said something simple. "Then you are not monsters. You are shields." That one sentence reached the human commander later that night, and he quietly wrote it down in his personal log. "We are not monsters, we are shields." He hoped it was true, because soon their shield would be tested harder than ever before. The Vargoths were coming back, and this time, they wouldn't just send warships, they'd bring terror on a level the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. But they didn't know one thing: humans had been through worse, and they always came back stronger. The wind over Zarka Prime carried a strange scent that day, a mix of burning metal, fresh soil, and storm. The skies had been clear for a week, and the people thought peace might stay a little longer. But in orbit above, the humans were watching the stars, and they had seen something the Zarkans hadn't. The Vargoths were back. Captain Ilias Ward stood on the main command deck of the orbital human station. His face was calm, but his hands were clenched behind his back. On the wide holographic display, hundreds of enemy signals lit up like blood red fireflies. Each dot was a ship, and each ship was headed straight for Zarka Prime. "How many?" Elias asked quietly. Mira, his second in command, gave a short reply. "More than 300 warships, 15 carriers, and something bigger we can't identify." Elias stared at the display. "They're serious this time." Down on the planet, the people didn't know yet. Children still played near the rebuilt city walls. Farmers had returned to their fields, shops had reopened, and laughter was starting to return to the streets. The Zarkans thought they were safe, but the storm was already on its way. The humans didn't wait to act. Sirens wailed through the camps and cities. A warning echoed through every speaker. Emergency protocol. All civilians must take shelter underground. Zarkan families looked up in confusion. Their smiles slowly faded, then fear returned to their eyes. Just like the first day when the war began. But this time, something was different. Humans didn't just bark orders. They guided people gently, carried the weak, and protected the children. Side by side, they led the Zarkans into safety. Captain Elias came down to the surface himself. He stood before the Zarkan High Council, showing them the hologram of the approaching fleet. The council gasped. "We didn't think they'd return this fast," said Elder Marith, her voice shaking. Elias nodded. "They are angry. We beat them before, and now they want revenge. Can we win again?" Another elder asked. Elias didn't lie. "Maybe," he said. "But this battle will be different. They're not just coming for your planet. They're coming to destroy your hope, your future." Silence fell over the room. Then Rilna, the healer, spoke softly. "Then we must not give them what they want." At that moment, the people of Zarka Prime made a decision. They would not hide in fear this time. They would fight. But not alone. They would stand with the humans who had come not to rule, but to protect. The next hours moved like fire. Human engineers activated hidden defense platforms in orbit. Giant satellites with plasma cannons locked onto targets from thousands of kilometers away. On the ground, railguns were loaded. Drone swarms were armed, and shield domes covered key cities. Zarkan engineers, once unsure and slow, now worked alongside human soldiers, building barricades and planting sensor beacons. Children were evacuated to deep shelters, guarded by machines with glowing red eyes and human medics with gentle hands. In the night sky, a red glow began to spread, the first sign of the enemies' arrival. They came like a black wave, cutting through the stars. Vargoth ships were sharp and deadly, shaped like flying knives. Their engines screamed across the sky as they dropped closer and closer. The first blast hit just outside the main city, shaking the ground. The second wiped out a mountain pass. Fire and smoke rose high into the air, but the humans were ready. A line of orbital weapons fired in perfect unison, slamming into the front of the Vargoth fleet. Dozens of enemy ships exploded like fireworks, filling space with burning wreckage. On the ground, anti-air guns opened fire, cutting down the smaller dropships before they could land. The battle had begun, and it was fierce from deep bunkers. Zarkan children huddled together, listening to the distant thunder of war above. Some cried, others held tightly to their parents. But no one ran, no one begged for surrender. They trusted the humans, and now they trusted themselves too. In the command room, Elias was calm but focused. "Tell the west flank to hold their position," he ordered. "Send drone reinforcements to Sector 5, Mira turned to him. "Sir, the unknown signal, it's getting closer." Elias looked at the screen. A massive red shape moved behind the enemy fleet, larger than any ship they had seen before. It pulsed like a living creature, wrapped in strange energy. "That's not a ship," Elias said quietly. "That's a weapon. Whatever it was coming for Zarka Prime, and when it reached the surface, everything could be lost." But Elias didn't flinch. He tapped a code into the console, and a new message was sent to all human outposts nearby. "Alpha Protocol engaged." The message read, "Prepare the final shield." The Vargoth Super Weapon now loomed in the sky above Zarka Prime. It didn't look like a regular warship. It was alive, or at least, it seemed like it was breathing. Its surface pulsed like a beating heart, glowing red and black, and a strange hum vibrated in the air, even from far below. The people of Zarka Prime stared at the sky, fear returning to their eyes. For all the human strength, this thing was beyond anything they'd ever seen. Even the children sensed it. This wasn't just another attack, it was the end. Unless something changed. Inside the command center, Captain Elias stood still, watching the screen. The massive object moved slowly, but its power readings were rising fast. If it fired its main weapon, it could destroy half the planet in one strike. "We've never seen energy levels like this," Mira said, her voice tense. "Even Earth Command didn't warn us about something like this." "That's because this wasn't in their reports," Elias replied. "The Vargoths built it in secret. They've been planning this for a long time." He turned toward the communication system and sent a message to every human and Zarkan fighter across the surface. "All units, listen closely," he said. "We are not facing just another enemy ship. We're facing something made to erase hope. But we are the shield. We don't run, we don't bend, we protect, no matter what." His voice echoed through the bunkers, the camps, and the mountain outposts. Soldiers straightened their backs. Zarkans gripped their tools and weapons tighter. Somewhere underground, a Zarkan child whispered to her mother, "He sounds like a warrior from the old legends, but even legends needed help." Elias activated a secret backup plan, Project Aegis. Hidden under Zarka Prime's surface were experimental human tech stations, too dangerous to use during normal battle, but now they were the only chance. Massive energy towers slowly rose from the ground, powered by Earth's latest shield tech. They began linking forming a giant dome of blue light around the largest cities. The final shield, as Elias had called it, was Earth's last gift to its allies unbreakable, but only for a short time. Back in orbit, the enemy superweapon began to charge. Its core turned molten red, lightning flashing around it. Mira's voice shook as she read the data. It's targeting the capital. If it fires, the shield might hold, but everything outside won't survive. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. Then we hold the line outside, he said. We draw its fire, delay the strike, give the shield time to fully activate. But that's suicide, Mira said, her voice sharp. That's duty, Elias answered. He and a team of elite soldiers climbed into drop pods. Their mission was to land on the battlefield near the projected blast zone. Not to win, but to buy time. Zarkan volunteers joined them, builders, healers, even musicians who had never held a weapon but refused to let others fight alone. One of them was Yellow, the young Zarkan who once called the humans shields. He now wore a small armor suit designed by human engineers. It was too big for him, but his eyes were full of fire. If they want our hope, he said, we'll make them fight for every piece of it. The pods launched, roaring through the sky like falling stars. They landed hard, kicking up dust and smoke. Elias and the others stepped out into chaos. Enemy drones swarmed the land. Vargoth warriors dropped from the sky, firing plasma guns. But the humans and Zarkans stood firm. They moved together, shielded each other, and held the line above. The superweapon's energy reached its peak. The red core glowed brighter than the sun, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then it fired. A massive beam of raw destruction shot toward the planet. It screamed through the air like a falling god. Buildings cracked, the ground shook, and wind blasted outward like a hurricane. But just before the beam hit the capital, the final shield activated fully. A dome of glowing blue light caught the beam in midair. The two energies clashed, creating a shockwave that knocked down trees, crushed vehicles, and sent even the strongest fighters to their knees. Inside the capital, the people held each other tightly, watching as the shield flickered under pressure. The light dimmed, sparked, and nearly collapsed until it suddenly grew brighter. Fed by emergency power from Earth satellites, the beam faded. The superweapon had failed. Cheers exploded across the human and Zarkan radios. Even those on the front lines shouted with joy. But Captain Elias didn't smile yet. He looked up at the weapon, still floating, still dangerous. It's not over, he said. But we just showed them we don't break. Yellow, covered in dust and bruises, stood beside him. What now? Now, Elias said, we take the fight to them. Smoke still filled the skies above Zarka Prime. The ground was scorched, buildings cracked, and the trees near the blast zone were gone. But the people were alive. The final shield had held. And the enemy's terrifying superweapon had failed to destroy the capital. But Captain Elias Ward knew the fight wasn't over. The Vargoth fleet still circled the planet. Their ships hadn't fled. Instead, they regrouped, surrounding the massive bioweapon that had just fired. It pulsed with slower energy now, but it was still alive and still dangerous. They're protecting it, Mira said, staring at the screen in the war room. They know it's damaged, but they also know we won't let it go. Elias nodded. Slowly, then we take it down before they repair it. The plan was dangerous, but clear. A mixed strike team of humans and Zarkans would be launched directly onto the surface of the weapon. Its outer layer wasn't metal, it was some kind of living armor grown from alien tissue that made it hard to scan, and even harder to destroy from a distance. The only option left was to land on it and kill it from the inside. Inside a large hangar bay, volunteers gathered. Some were elite human soldiers trained in zero-gravity combat. Others were Zarkan engineers, carrying pulse cutters and EMP grenades. Some had never seen battle before, but they stood ready. Yellow, the young Zarkan, was among them. His armor was upgraded, now fitted properly, painted with both Earth's flag and the Zarkan sun symbol. He looked at Elias and asked, "Do you think we'll survive?" Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But if we don't do this, no one survives. Not here, not anywhere they attack next." The ships launched in silence. They passed through the upper clouds and flew directly toward the enemy's strongest weapon. The Vargoth warships tried to intercept, but Earth's orbital cannons opened fire again, tearing through their lines just long enough for the strike team to reach the target. The bioweapon was massive like a mountain floating in space. Its surface was black and wet, moving slightly as if breathing. When the human pods hit the surface, the ground shook like muscle under pressure. It felt alive because it was set. "The charges," Elias commanded. "Find the core and don't stop until we see it melt." The team moved quickly, cutting into the surface with plasma blades. The outer layer oozed dark liquid, and inside they found tunnels that twisted like veins. Heat pulsed from deep within, and strange alien lights flickered across the walls. It was like walking through the body of a giant creature, filled with danger in every corner. Suddenly, movement out of the fleshy walls. Creatures emerged, part machine, part flesh. They were guardians, created to defend the weapon from intruders. Sharp limbs, glowing red eyes, and terrifying speed. The battle inside began. Zarkan engineers screamed as the creatures attacked, but the human soldiers stood in front of them, shielding them with their bodies. Blasters fired, grenades exploded, and echoing roars filled the tunnels. Yellow fired his plasma rifle again, and again, protecting the fellow Zarkan who had dropped his weapon. Captain Elias fought at the front, leading the way. He kicked open a strange door made of bone and light, revealing the heart of the weapon, an enormous glowing crystal surrounded by living tendrils. The core pulsed with power, even though it was damaged. "Set all explosives here," Elias ordered. "We finish this now." Myra's voice came through the radio. "Captain, enemy ships are moving again. They're diving toward the surface." "They know what you're doing," Elias spoke quickly. "Buy us 2 more minutes." The humans outside, still on the ground of Zarka Prime, launched every fighter they had. Even injured soldiers returned to the battlefield, firing from bunkers and towers to keep the enemy distracted. Civilians carried ammo, helped move supplies, and shouted directions over comms. Back inside the weapon, the explosives were ready. Elias took a deep breath and looked around. "Everyone out now," he said. "Run for the exit." But the core suddenly began pulling in energy. Its glow turned white-hot, and the tendrils reached for the team. One Zarkan engineer was grabbed and pulled into the walls before anyone could save him. Yellow and Elias were the last to leave, running through shaking tunnels as fire followed behind them. Just before reaching the surface, Elias pushed Yellow into the exit pod and slammed the button to launch him out. Then he turned back, still inside the living weapon. Outside, Mira screamed over the comms, "Elias, no! Get out of there!" But Elias didn't reply. He stood near the final detonator, staring at the glowing core. His voice came through the comms, calm and strong. "Tell Earth. Tell Zarka Prime. We didn't run." He pressed the trigger. The explosion ripped through space. The weapon broke apart into glowing chunks, burning like stars as they fell through Zarka Prime's atmosphere. The shockwave knocked out every Vargoth ship nearby. Some exploded, others turned to flee. The sky above the planet cleared again. And for the first time since the war began, the people of Zarka Prime saw no more enemy ships, only sunlight, blue skies, and falling light from a hero's final stand. The sky was quiet again. Ash from the destroyed Vargoth superweapon drifted like falling snow, glowing softly as it scattered over Zarka Prime. The people watched from rooftops, fields, and shelters, eyes wide, hearts frozen between sadness and awe. Captain Elias Ward was gone. The man who had led them, protected them, and finally sacrificed everything to destroy the Vargoth's final weapon, had vanished in fire and light. No body was recovered, only fragments of his armor found near the remains of the enemy's core. But everyone knew he had stayed behind to make sure it ended. A silence hung over the world, not of fear this time, but respect. In the capital square, a crowd gathered. Human and Zarkan banners flew side by side. And in the center stood a tall crystal monument, half blue, half silver. It shimmered with energy, and engraved at the bottom were the words, "We don't run, we protect, we endure." Yellow stood before the monument, his helmet under one arm. His armor was scratched and burned, his eyes tired but firm. He looked out at the gathered crowd, thousands of Zarkans, many of them children, and hundreds of human soldiers standing at attention. He stepped up onto the platform, took a deep breath, and spoke. "We called for help," he began, "and they came. Not with soft hands or sweet words, but with fire, steel, and sacrifice." The crowd was silent, listening closely. "When the enemy came to erase us, they didn't ask what we could offer," Yellow said. "They didn't take our land, our skies, or our freedom. They gave us something else, courage, strength, and belief that we could stand too." Mira stood beside him, her uniform pressed, her face pale but proud. "Captain Ward was more than a soldier," she said. "He was the shield between fear and hope, between surrender and survival." Tears filled the eyes of many. Some Zarkans had once feared the humans. Now they wept for one of them. In the days that followed, the remaining Vargoth ships vanished into deep space. No one chased them. They were broken, not just in fleet, but in spirit. They had brought terror to a peaceful world, and received something they didn't expect in return, humanity. With the war over, rebuilding began. Human engineers worked side by side with Zarkan architects. Together they rebuilt the city stronger than before. New defense towers were placed, but not to control, to protect. Schools reopened, children returned to their learning, and for the first time, classes were taught in both Zarkan and English. Rilna, the healer, now ran a joint medical center. Human medics trained her people in advanced tech, while she taught them how to use nature to heal wounds. Old ways and new ways blended into something beautiful. Yellow joined the new Planetary Defense Union, not as a soldier, but as a bridge between the two species. "If we are to share this future," he said, "we must build it together, with trust, with open hands, and if needed, closed fists to those who threaten it." Meanwhile, Earth Command declared Zarka Prime an official allied protectorate. Not a colony, not a subject, but a friend. Human ships still patrolled the edges of the system, but with banners that now included the symbol of the Zarkan sun. And every year, on the day the weapon was destroyed, both humans and Zarkans lit lanterns, red and blue, and sent them into the sky. They called it Elias Day, a day to remember that hope sometimes wears armor and peace sometimes walks through fire to reach you. But far beyond Zarka Prime, in a quiet part of space, a single escape pod floated near an asteroid field, burnt, cracked, and without power. Inside was a man unconscious, covered in burns, breathing slowly, but alive, his name Elias Ward. The humans would find him weeks later, barely alive but smiling when he opened his eyes. His first words were simple. "Did they make it?" "Yes, sir," Mira told him, holding back tears. "They did, we all did." Zarka Prime would never be the same again, not because it was broken, but because it had become something new. A world that once knew only peace, now understood strength. A people who once whispered in fear, now spoke with pride. And everywhere in the galaxy, when fear rose and darkness threatened other worlds, stories would be told of the day Zarka Prime called for support, and humanity answered not with promises but with shock, terror, and hope wrapped in human skin.